What happens when a joke meant to embarrass your husband at a family dinner ends with a lawyer knocking on your door? Can a single cruel comment unravel an entire marriage and force you to face the truth about who's really been taking advantage? The day I was served legal papers, I realized too late that I'd been playing games with someone who knew exactly how to win, without ever raising his voice. The trendy bistro buzzed with conversation as our extended family gathered around the large oak table. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against ceramic plates, and the warm lighting cast everyone in a golden glow. I should have felt content, surrounded by family, but instead I felt restless, craving attention like I always did at these gatherings. Harry sat beside me, methodically cutting his salmon into precise squares, his accountant's precision evident even in how he ate. At 36, my husband had settled into a comfortable routine that I found increasingly suffocating. His brown hair was already thinning at the crown, and his wire-rimmed glasses made him look older than his years. "So, Ianthe, how's work treating you?" Owen, Harry's older brother, asked from across the table. Owen had always been the more charismatic Marwood brother, with his easy smile and confident demeanor. "Oh, keeping busy at the customer service center. Someone has to deal with all the complainers," I replied, twirling my wine glass. "Speaking of which, I've been pulling so much overtime lately. Good thing Harry's here to keep the lights on at home." Harry glanced up from his plate, a flicker of something crossing his face before he returned to his meal. "That's wonderful that you're both working so hard, Janice," Harry's mother said diplomatically. At 59, she maintained the polished appearance of a woman who'd spent decades as a banker's wife. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and her navy blazer looked expensive. My own mother, Lily, laughed from the other end of the table. "Oh, Ianthe's always been ambitious. Remember when she was little? She'd reorganize the whole playroom just to show the other kids how it should be done." "Some things never change," I said with a grin, feeling the familiar rush of being the center of attention. "I mean, I practically run our household finances now. Harry's sweet, but let's be honest." I reached over and patted his shoulder condescendingly. "He's really only good for paying the bills these days." The table fell silent. Owen's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Janice's lips pressed into a thin line. Even the background chatter from other diners seemed to fade. Harry set down his knife and fork with deliberate care. His face had gone pale, but his voice remained steady. "Excuse me, I need some air." "Oh, come on, Harry, don't be so sensitive," I called after him as he stood. "It was just a joke. Everyone knows you're my responsible little accountant." But Harry was already walking toward the restaurant's entrance, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Ianthe," Owen said quietly, "that was pretty harsh." "What? I'm not allowed to tease my own husband?" I took another sip of wine, feeling defensive. "He knows I don't mean anything by it. Harry's just, you know how he is, takes everything so seriously." Lily nodded supportively. "Men can be so sensitive about these things. I'm sure he'll get over it." But Janice was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with something colder. "That young man works 60 hours a week to provide for you and Sophie. He deserves better than to be humiliated in public." "I wasn't humiliating him," I protested. "God, everyone's acting like I committed a crime. It was a harmless comment." "Harmless?" Owen shook his head. "Ianthe, you basically told everyone here that your husband is worthless except for his paycheck. How is that harmless?" I felt my cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment. "You're all overreacting. Harry and I joke around all the time. He gives as good as he gets." But even as I said it, I couldn't think of a single time Harry had ever made a joke at my expense in public. In fact, I couldn't remember him ever saying anything negative about me to anyone. 20 minutes passed before Harry returned to the table. His face was composed, but I noticed he'd been outside long enough for his hair to be slightly mussed by the evening breeze. "Sorry about that," he said simply, sitting back down. "I needed a moment." "See? He's fine," I said, though something in Harry's tone made me feel less certain. My husband's tougher than he looks. Harry nodded politely but didn't meet my eyes. For the rest of the dinner, he participated in conversation when directly addressed but otherwise remained quiet. I found myself talking more and more, trying to fill the awkward silences, but the earlier warmth of the evening had evaporated. When the check came, Harry quietly handed over his credit card without comment, just as he always did. But this time, the gesture felt different somehow, more pointed. As we prepared to leave, I noticed Harry reaching for his phone on the table, but it wasn't there. "Looking for something?" I asked. "My phone. I thought I left it here." He patted his jacket pockets, then checked under his napkin. "Maybe you dropped it outside when you went for your walk," Owen suggested. Harry retraced his steps to the entrance while the rest of us gathered our coats. When he returned, he was holding his phone, but his expression was troubled. "Found it," he said simply. "Where was it?" I asked. "On the ground by the parking meter. Screen was cracked." He showed me the spider web of fractures across the display. "Must have fallen when I was getting some air." "Oh no, we'll have to get that fixed," I said, though I was more annoyed than sympathetic. A cracked phone screen would mean another expense. "I'll handle it," Harry said quietly. As we walked to our cars, I noticed Harry checking his damaged phone repeatedly, squinting at the fractured screen. Each time he looked at it, his jaw tightened slightly. "What's so important?" I asked as we reached our sedan. "Just work emails," he replied, but something in his voice sounded off. The drive home was unusually quiet. Sophie, our 7-year-old daughter, had spent the evening with a babysitter, and I'd planned to tell Harry about my day, maybe even apologize for the comment at dinner if he was still being sensitive about it. But Harry seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing at his cracked phone screen at red lights. "You're really not going to talk to me?" I finally asked as we pulled into our driveway. Harry turned off the engine and sat in silence for a moment. "What would you like me to say, Ianthe?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. You've been acting weird since dinner." "Have I?" He looked at me directly for the first time since we'd left the restaurant. "I've been thinking about what you said, about me being only good for paying bills." "Oh, for crying out loud, Harry. It was a joke, a stupid joke. I'm sorry if your feelings got hurt, okay?" "My feelings," he repeated slowly. "Right." He got out of the car and walked toward the house, leaving me sitting in the passenger seat, frustrated and confused. This wasn't like Harry at all. Usually, when we had these little spats, he'd be the first to apologize and try to smooth things over. Inside, Harry went straight to his home office and closed the door. I could hear him on the phone, speaking in low tones. Probably calling his mother to complain about me, I thought irritably. But as I got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the image of Harry's face when I'd made that comment at dinner. For just a moment, before he'd excused himself, I'd seen something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Not hurt, exactly, but something deeper, something that looked almost like resolve. I pushed the thought away. Harry was predictable, steady, boring Harry. He'd get over it by morning, just like he always did. I had no idea that across town, Evelyn was probably still awake, and that tomorrow I'd need her support more than ever. The next morning, Harry left for work earlier than usual. I found a note on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. "Taking car to shop for phone mount repair. Will catch bus to office. H." Even his notes were precise and considerate. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash, feeling irritated by his passive-aggressive politeness. At my job at the customer service center, I tried to focus on the endless stream of complaints and questions, but my mind kept drifting to the previous evening. Maybe I had been a little harsh with Harry, but honestly, he needed to develop a thicker skin. Marriage was about being able to joke with each other, wasn't it? During my lunch break, I headed to the break room where I'd been meeting Cole Hartley for the past few weeks. Cole was a gym instructor at FitZone, the fitness center where I'd started working out 3 months ago. At 32, he had the kind of lean, muscular build that Harry definitely didn't, and when he smiled at me, I felt like the most interesting woman in the world. "Rough morning?" Cole asked, looking up from his protein shake as I slumped into the chair across from him. "You could say that. Harry's being weird about something I said at dinner last night." "What did you say?" I waved my hand dismissively. "Just made a comment about him being good for paying bills." He took it way too seriously. Cole raised an eyebrow. "That's pretty cold, even for you." "It was a joke. God, why is everyone acting like I committed murder?" I reached across the table and touched his hand. "This is why I need someone who actually gets me." Cole glanced around the break room nervously. "Ianthe, we need to be careful. People are starting to notice we're always having lunch together." "So? We're friends. Friends have lunch." "Friends don't do what we did in my car last week," Cole said quietly. I felt a thrill at the memory, followed immediately by a pang of guilt that I quickly pushed away. "That's different. Harry and we're basically roommates at this point. He's so focused on his spreadsheets and his precious routines. When's the last time he looked at me the way you do?" "Maybe he would if you didn't publicly humiliate him," Cole said, though his tone was gentle. "Whose side are you on?" I snapped. "I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just saying maybe there's a reason he's being distant." I studied Cole's face, looking for the admiration and desire I'd grown accustomed to seeing there. Instead, I saw something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "You don't understand," I said, softening my voice. "Harry and we're not really married anymore. We're just going through the motions for Sophie's sake. I deserve to be happy, don't I?" Cole's expression shifted slightly. "Of course you do. Everyone deserves happiness." "Exactly." I squeezed his hand. "So stop worrying about what people think. We're not hurting anyone." But even as I said it, I thought about Sophie asking me the night before why Daddy seemed sad. I'd told her he was just tired from work, but she'd given me that look kids get when they know adults are lying. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Evelyn. "How did dinner go last night? Did you tell Harry about you-know-what?" I quickly typed back, "Not yet. Still working up to it. Harry's being sensitive about some stupid comment I made." "What comment?" "Nothing major. Just said he was only good for paying bills. Everyone acted like I'd stabbed him or something." There was a long pause before Evelyn replied. "Yikes. That's pretty brutal, even for you. Maybe apologize." "Why should I apologize for being honest?" I typed, feeling defensive again. "Because he's your husband and the father of your child." I stared at the message, annoyed. Even Evelyn was taking Harry's side now. "Look, I have to go," I told Cole, standing up abruptly. "My break's almost over." "Ianthe, wait." Cole caught my wrist gently. "Are you sure about all this? About us?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're married. You have a kid. Maybe we should slow down and think about what we're doing." I felt a surge of panic. Cole was supposed to be my escape, my validation that I was still attractive and desirable. If he started having second thoughts... "I thought you cared about me," I said, letting hurt creep into my voice. "I do care about you. That's why I'm worried. This whole situation is getting complicated." "It's only complicated if we make it complicated," I insisted. "Harry doesn't have to know anything. We're just having fun." Cole looked uncertain, but he nodded slowly. "Okay, but we really do need to be more careful." I leaned down and kissed his cheek, breathing in his cologne. "Don't worry so much. Everything's going to be fine." Walking back to my desk, I felt better. Cole was just being cautious, which was probably smart, and Evelyn would come around once she understood how unhappy I'd been with Harry. Everyone would understand, eventually. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the familiar sedan parked across the street from our office building. But as I glanced out the window, I saw it clearly. Harry's car, with him sitting in the driver's seat, looking directly at our building. My heart skipped. What was Harry doing here? He'd said he was taking the car to the shop. Had he finished early and decided to surprise me with lunch? I watched for several minutes, but Harry didn't get out of the car. He just sat there, occasionally looking down at something in his lap. His phone, maybe, though I remembered it was cracked. A terrible thought occurred to me. What if Harry suspected something? What if he'd seen me with Cole somehow? But that was impossible. We'd been careful, and besides, Harry wasn't the type to play detective. He was straightforward, trusting, maybe even a little naive. If he suspected I was having an affair, he'd just ask me directly. Wouldn't he? I tried to focus on work for the rest of the afternoon, but I kept glancing out the window. Harry's car stayed there until almost 5 o'clock, when it finally pulled away. When I got home that evening, Harry was in the kitchen helping Sophie with her homework. He looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, our eyes met. "How was work?" he asked, his tone neutral. "Fine. Busy day. How was yours?" "Productive." He turned back to Sophie's math worksheet. "I got the phone fixed, by the way." "That's good. It looked pretty bad last night." "Yes, it did." Something in his voice made me look at him more closely, but his expression was unreadable. Did you drive by my office today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Harry's pencil paused over Sophie's worksheet. "Why would I do that?" "I thought I saw your car, around lunchtime." "Must have been someone else's car. I was in meetings all afternoon." But I knew what I'd seen. That was definitely Harry's car, with the small dent in the rear bumper from where I'd backed into a post last month. "Daddy, is this right?" Sophie held up her worksheet, breaking the tension. "Let me see." Harry examined her work with the same careful attention he gave everything else. "This one's wrong, sweetheart. Remember, when you're borrowing from the tens place." I watched him patiently explain the concept to Sophie, his voice gentle and encouraging. Harry had always been a good father, I had to admit. He never lost his temper with her, never dismissed her questions as silly. So, why did I feel so restless, so dissatisfied with our life together? Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, I found Harry in his office, working on his laptop. "We should talk about last night," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Should we?" He didn't look up from his screen. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean anything by that comment." "I know you didn't mean anything by it," Harry said quietly. "That's the problem." "What do you mean?" Finally, he looked at me. "You didn't mean to hurt me, but you also didn't care if you did. There's a difference." I felt a flash of anger. "So now I'm supposed to walk on eggshells around you. I can't even make a joke without you analyzing it to death. Is that what you think this is about? A joke? Isn't it?" Harry was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop and stood up. "I'm going to bed," he said. "We can talk more tomorrow if you want." "Harry, don't be like this. Don't shut me out." He paused at the door. "I'm not shutting you out, Ianthe. I'm just trying to figure some things out." "Figure what out?" But he was already walking down the hallway, leaving me standing alone in his office, surrounded by his neat filing cabinets and carefully organized desk supplies. I should have followed him. Should have pushed harder for a real conversation. Instead, I went to our bedroom and found Harry already under the covers, facing away from me. "Are you really going to give me the silent treatment?" I asked as I got ready for bed. "I'm not giving you anything," Harry said without turning around. "I'm just tired." I slipped into bed beside him, but the space between us felt wider than usual. Harry's breathing was too controlled, too measured. He wasn't asleep. "I love you," I said softly, testing the waters. "I love you too," he replied automatically. But something in his voice had changed. The words were there, but the feeling behind them seemed distant. I lay awake for a long time that night, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what was happening to my marriage. Everything had been fine just a few days ago. Harry had been his usual, reliable, predictable self. I'd been managing my situation with Cole carefully, making sure it didn't interfere with my home life. So, Why did everything suddenly feel so unstable? The last thing I remembered before falling asleep was the image of Harry's car parked outside my office building, and the nagging certainty that he'd been lying about his meetings. The next few days passed in a strange, uncomfortable rhythm. Harry continued his normal routines, making coffee in the morning, helping Sophie get ready for school, working late into the evening. But there was a distance in everything he did. He was polite, considerate, and completely unreachable. I tried to bridge the gap with small gestures. I made his favorite dinner, complimented his new shirt, even suggested we watch a movie together. Each time, Harry responded appropriately, but it felt like talking to a courteous stranger. On Thursday evening, I decided to test the waters more directly. "I'm going to be working late tomorrow," I announced over dinner. "Big project deadline coming up." Sophie looked up from her chicken nuggets. "Again, you work late on Tuesday too." "Sometimes grown-ups have to work extra hard, sweetheart," I said, avoiding Harry's eyes. "What kind of project?" Harry asked mildly. "Oh, customer satisfaction surveys. Very boring stuff." The lie came easily. I'd actually planned to meet Cole at his apartment after his evening training sessions ended. Harry cut his chicken with precise movements. "Will you need me to pick up Sophie from her piano lesson?" "If you don't mind." "Of course not." The conversation died there, but I noticed Harry making a note in his phone. He'd started doing that lately, writing down little details about schedules and plans. Probably just his accountant's mind trying to stay organized. Friday evening, I told Harry I was leaving for my work project and drove to Cole's apartment complex. Cole lived in a modern building downtown, the kind of place that attracted young professionals who wanted to be close to the nightlife. "You seem tense," Cole observed as he opened a bottle of wine. "Harry's being weird. Ever since that dinner, he's been, I don't know, different." "Different how?" "Distant, like he's thinking about something all the time, but he won't tell me what." Cole handed me a glass of red wine. "Maybe he knows." "Knows what?" "About us." I felt a chill. "That's impossible. We've been careful." "Have we? You said he was parked outside your office the other day." "He said that wasn't him." "And you believe him?" I took a large gulp of wine. "Harry doesn't lie. He's annoyingly honest about everything." "Honest people can learn to lie when they need to," Cole said quietly. The thought made me uncomfortable. Harry lying would mean Harry changing, and I needed Harry to stay predictable. His reliability was what made everything else possible. "You're paranoid," I said. "Harry's just being moody. He'll get over it." But even as I said it, I remembered the way Harry had been looking at me lately. Not with hurt or anger, but with something that looked almost like evaluation, as if he was seeing me clearly for the first time and taking careful notes. We spent the evening watching movies and talking about everything except my marriage. Cole was good at making me feel attractive and interesting, reminding me of who I used to be before I became just Harry's wife and Sophie's mum. It was almost 11 when I finally headed home. I'd told Harry I'd be working until at least 10:30, so the timing should have been perfect. But as I pulled into our driveway, I saw that the living room lights were still on. Harry was usually in bed by 10:30 on weeknights. I found him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, surrounded by papers. "You're up late," I said, trying to sound casual. "So are you. How was the project?" "Exhausting. We finally got everything submitted, though." Another lie, but this one felt heavier somehow. Harry nodded and made another note in his phone. "That's good. Sophie was asking about you during her piano lesson." "Oh? What did she say?" "She wanted to know why you've been working so much lately." I told her sometimes jobs get busy. I felt a pang of guilt. Sophie was too young to understand adult complications, but she was definitely noticing the changes in our household. "What are you working on?" I asked, nodding toward his papers. "Just some financial planning, reviewing our accounts, that sort of thing." I moved closer and saw spreadsheets covered with numbers, dates, and what looked like transaction records. Harry's handwriting filled the margins with neat, precise notes. Is everything okay? Are we having money problems? No, nothing like that. Just want to make sure I understand where everything stands. Something in his phrasing made me look at him more closely. Where everything stands with what? With our finances, our commitments, our arrangements. Harry, you're talking in riddles. Just tell me what's going on. He closed the laptop and gathered his papers into a neat stack. Nothing's going on, Ianthe. I'm just trying to be more thorough about things. More thorough about what things? About understanding the full picture of our life together. The way he said our life together made it sound like something he was studying rather than something he was living. Are you having some kind of midlife crisis? I asked. Because if you are, we should talk about it. Harry looked at me for a long moment. Do you think I'm having a midlife crisis? I don't know what to think. You've been acting strange ever since that dinner. Strange how? Distant, secretive. You're taking notes about everything. You're asking weird questions. You're working on mysterious projects. My voice was rising with frustration. It's like you don't trust me anymore. Don't I? The question hung in the air between us. I'd expected Harry to immediately reassure me, to apologize for making me feel distrusted. Instead, he was looking at me with that same evaluating expression. What kind of question is that? I demanded. An honest one. Of course you trust me. I'm your wife. Yes, you are. He stood up and walked toward the hallway. I'm going to bed. We can talk more tomorrow if you want. Harry, don't walk away from me. We're having a conversation. He paused at the bottom of the stairs. Are we? Because it feels like you're asking me questions you already know the answers to. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired, and I think we should both get some sleep. I followed him upstairs, my frustration building. You can't just shut down every time things get difficult. That's not how marriage works. How does marriage work, Ianthe? The question stopped me cold. What? I'm asking you to explain to me how marriage works, since you seem to have strong opinions about it. Marriage works when both people are honest with each other, when they communicate, when they don't keep secrets. Harry nodded slowly. That sounds right. Honesty, communication, no secrets. Exactly. So, if I asked you a direct question about your evening, you'd give me an honest answer? My heart started beating faster. Of course I would. Okay. Harry sat down on the edge of our bed and looked at me directly. Where were you tonight, Ianthe? I told you. Working on a project. Where specifically? At the office. Which office? My office. Where else would I be working? Harry nodded and made another note in his phone. The gesture was starting to make me nervous. Why are you writing that down? Just keeping track of things. What things? Details, dates, times, locations. He looked up at me. You know, the kind of information that helps create a full picture. A full picture of what? Of how marriage works, Harry said simply. I stared at him, trying to understand what was happening. This wasn't the Harry I knew. The Harry I knew didn't ask probing questions or take mysterious notes. He didn't speak in careful, measured sentences that seemed to have hidden meanings. I don't understand what's gotten into you, I said finally. Maybe that's the problem, Harry replied. Maybe you never did understand. He went into the bathroom and closed the door, leaving me standing in our bedroom, feeling like I'd just had a conversation in a foreign language. When Harry came out, he was carrying a pillow and a spare blanket. What are you doing? I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight. Why? Because I think we both need some space to think. Think about what? About how marriage works, he said, echoing my earlier words. About honesty and communication, and not keeping secrets. He walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the uncomfortable feeling that somehow, in the space of a 10-minute conversation, the balance of power in my marriage had shifted in a way I didn't understand. I lay awake for hours that night, replaying every word of our exchange. Harry had seemed calm, almost pleasant, but there had been something underneath his politeness that I'd never encountered before. Something that felt like strategy. The thought was ridiculous. Harry didn't do strategy. Harry did spreadsheets and tax returns and carefully planned family budgets. He was transparent and predictable and safe, wasn't he? Saturday morning brought an uncomfortable new routine. Harry made breakfast for Sophie and himself, but didn't offer to make any for me. When I came downstairs, he greeted me politely and asked if I'd slept well, but the warmth that used to be in his voice was completely absent. "Are you still planning to sulk all weekend?" I asked as I poured myself coffee. "I'm not sulking," Harry replied, helping Sophie tie her shoes. "I'm just giving you the space you seem to need." "What space? I never said I needed space." "Didn't you?" He looked at me with that same evaluating expression. "You've been working so much lately. Staying out late. I assumed you preferred your independence." Sophie looked between us with the worried expression kids get when they sense adult tension they don't understand. "Can we not do this in front of Sophie?" I said quietly. "Do what?" "Whatever this passive-aggressive thing is that you're doing." "I'm not being passive-aggressive. I'm being considerate. You have your work projects, I have mine." "What work projects?" "I'm helping Owen with some financial planning this weekend. We'll probably be busy most of today." This was news to me. Harry and Owen got along fine, but they rarely spent entire days together. "Since when do you do financial planning on weekends?" "Since I realized how important it is to understand all the details of a situation before making major decisions." There it was again, that careful, measured way of speaking that didn't sound like my husband at all. "Daddy, are you and Mummy fighting?" Sophie asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart," Harry said immediately, his voice warming as he addressed our daughter. "Mummy and Daddy are just working through some grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." "But you slept on the couch." "Sometimes grown-ups need different sleeping arrangements. It doesn't mean anything bad." I watched Harry comfort Sophie with the same patient gentleness he'd always shown her, and felt a confusing mix of gratitude and resentment. He was handling this well with Sophie, but his careful explanations made me feel like the bad guy. After Harry left with Sophie to drop her at her friend's house before meeting Owen, I called Evelyn. "He's acting so weird," I complained. "It's like he's turned into a completely different person overnight." "Maybe he's finally growing a backbone," Evelyn said. "You have been pretty hard on him lately." "Not you too. I made one comment at dinner. One comment. Everyone's acting like I committed a felony." "Ianthe, you told a room full of people that your husband was only good for paying bills. How did you expect him to react?" "I expected him to get over it like he always does. Harry doesn't hold grudges." "Maybe Harry's tired of being the one who always gets over things." I felt a surge of irritation. "Whose side are you on here?" "I'm on the side of you not destroying your marriage over some gym instructor." "Cole has nothing to do with this." "Doesn't he? You've been complaining about Harry more and more since you started seeing Cole. It's like you need Harry to be the villain to justify what you're doing." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When's the last time you said something nice about Harry? When's the last time you appreciated anything he does for you and Sophie?" I couldn't think of an answer, which made me even more defensive. "Harry and I have problems that have nothing to do with Cole," I insisted. "We've grown apart. We want different things." "What different things?" "I want excitement, passion, someone who sees me as more than just a wife and mother." "And Harry doesn't see you that way." "Harry sees me as part of his routine. I'm like his morning coffee. Necessary, but not particularly interesting." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "Ianthe, do you even like Harry anymore?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course I like him. He's my husband." "That's not what I asked." I thought about it. Did I like Harry? I appreciated what he did for our family. I respected his work ethic and his devotion to Sophie. But did I actually enjoy his company? When was the last time I'd looked forward to spending time with him? It's complicated, I said finally. It's really not, Evelyn replied. Either you want to be married to him or you don't, but stringing him along while you figure it out isn't fair to anyone. After we hung up, I felt more unsettled than before. Evelyn was supposed to be supportive, not challenging. Everyone was acting like I was the problem, when all I was doing was trying to find some happiness in my life. I decided to text Cole. Can you meet me tonight? I need to see you. His response came back quickly. I don't think that's a good idea. Things are getting too complicated. Please, just for a little while. I'm going crazy here. There was a long pause before he replied, Okay, but we need to talk about where this is heading. That evening, I told Harry I was going out with Evelyn to see a movie. He nodded and made another note in his phone, which was becoming an increasingly annoying habit. What movie? He asked. I named the first film I could think of. That new romantic comedy at the multiplex. Sounds nice. What time does it start? 8:30. So you should be home by 11 or so. Probably. Maybe later if we get drinks afterward. Harry nodded and wrote something else down. Have fun. I drove to Cole's apartment feeling like I was escaping from prison. At least with Cole, I could be myself without being analysed and questioned and made to feel guilty for wanting more out of life. But Cole seemed different too. He was distracted, checking his phone frequently, and he kept glancing toward the window. You're making me nervous, I said. What's wrong? I've been thinking about what we talked about your husband maybe knowing something. Harry doesn't know anything, trust me. How can you be so sure? Because I know Harry, he's not devious. If he suspected something, he'd confront me directly. People change when they're pushed too far, Cole said. Even nice guys have limits. I moved closer to him on the couch. Stop worrying about Harry. He's not going to be a problem. But Cole pulled away slightly. That's just it, Ianthe. I think he might already be a problem. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we should cool things off for a while. Let the situation with your husband settle down. I felt a spike of panic. Cole was my escape valve, my proof that I was still desirable and interesting. Without him, I'd be trapped in my boring marriage with no hope of something better. You don't mean that, I said, moving closer again. We're good together. We make each other happy. Do we? Because lately, every time I see you, you're stressed about your marriage. That's not making either of us happy. I'm only stressed because Harry's being difficult. Once he gets back to normal, everything will be fine. And if he doesn't get back to normal? I didn't have an answer for that. We spent the next hour talking in circles, with me trying to convince Cole that our situation was manageable, and him expressing increasing doubts. Finally, he agreed to continue seeing me, but only if we were more careful. No more meeting at your office, he said. No more long phone calls. We keep this simple and discreet. I agreed, though I felt like I was negotiating the terms of my own happiness. It was almost 10:30 when I left Cole's apartment. I told Harry I might be late, but I decided to head home anyway. The evening hadn't gone the way I'd hoped, and I was feeling emotionally drained. As I walked to my car in the parking garage, I had the strangest feeling that I was being watched. I looked around but didn't see anyone. Still, the feeling persisted as I drove home. I was 2 blocks from Cole's apartment when I saw it. Harry's sedan, parked on a side street with a clear view of Cole's building. The same car I'd seen outside my office earlier in the week. My hand started shaking as I pulled over and stared at the familiar vehicle. This couldn't be a coincidence. Harry was following me, but as I watched, I realized the car was empty. Where was Harry? I sat there for 10 minutes, my mind racing. Had Harry seen me leave Cole's building? Had he followed me and then gone back to... what? Confront Cole? Finally, I drove home, checking my rearview mirror constantly. Harry's car never appeared behind me. When I got to our house, all the lights were off except for the porch light Harry always left on for me. I crept inside as quietly as possible and found Harry asleep on the couch, still wearing his clothes from earlier. I stood there looking at him in the dim light from the hallway. He looked peaceful, innocent, like the man I'd married 8 years ago. Not like someone who would follow his wife and spy on her, but I knew what I'd seen. The next morning, Harry was up before me, making pancakes for Sophie, as if nothing had happened. "How was the movie?" he asked when I came downstairs. "Fine, good, funny." "What was your favorite part?" I scrambled to remember anything about the film I'd claimed to see. "Oh, the ending was really sweet." Harry nodded and made a note in his phone. "Harry, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Where were you last night, after I left?" "Here. Why?" "You were here the whole time?" "Yes. Sophie and I watched a movie and then she went to bed. I fell asleep on the couch reading." He was lying. I knew he was lying. But his expression was so calm, so innocent, that for a moment I doubted what I'd seen. "What did you and Sophie watch?" "That animated movie she likes, the one with the talking animals." I could verify that with Sophie, but something told me Harry would have made sure his story was airtight. "Did you go out at all?" "No. Should I have?" I thought I saw your car downtown." Harry looked at me with genuine curiosity. "Downtown? Why would I be downtown?" "I don't know. That's why I'm asking." "Maybe it was someone else's car. You know how many grey sedans there are." "Maybe." But I knew it wasn't someone else's car. I knew Harry was lying to me, just as I'd been lying to him. The difference was, I was starting to suspect that Harry was much better at it than I was. The following week brought a new level of tension to our house. Harry continued his polite, distant routine, but now I was watching him as carefully as he seemed to be watching me. Every note he made in his phone, every casual question about my schedule, every slight change in his usual patterns, I noticed it all. On Wednesday, Sophie came home from school with a note from her teacher, requesting a parent conference. "What's this about?" I asked Harry, showing him the note. Harry read it carefully. "Looks like Sophie's been having some behavioral issues in class. The teacher wants to discuss it." "What kind of behavioral issues?" "Difficulty concentrating, apparently, and she's been asking her teacher some concerning questions." "Like what?" "Like whether it's normal for parents to sleep in different rooms, and whether kids always live with both parents." I felt a stab of guilt. Sophie was more aware of our marital problems than we'd realized. "We should both go to the conference," Harry said, "present a united front." "Of course." But the idea of sitting in a room with Harry and a teacher, pretending our marriage was fine, while discussing how our problems were affecting our daughter, made me feel sick. That evening, Evelyn called with news that made everything worse. "I ran into Janice at the grocery store today," she said. "Harry's mother." "Oh no, what did she say?" "She was cold. Really cold. She asked how you were doing, but not in a friendly way. More like she was gathering information." "What kind of information?" "She wanted to know if you were keeping busy lately, and she made some comment about how hard it must be for Harry to handle everything at home while you're working so much." I felt my stomach drop. "She knows." "Knows what?" "About Cole. About everything. Harry must have told her." "You don't know that." "Then why would she be asking about my schedule? Why would she mention Harry handling things at home?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "Ianthe, maybe it's time to come clean. If Harry already suspects something, wouldn't it be better to control the narrative?" "Come clean? Are you insane? If I admit to the affair, Harry will divorce me. I could lose Sophie." "If Harry has evidence of the affair, he's going to divorce you anyway. At least if you confess and show remorse, you might be able to work something out." "There's nothing to work out. Harry doesn't have evidence because there isn't any evidence to have." But even as I said it, I thought about Harry's car outside Cole's building, about his mysterious notes, about the way he'd been asking specific questions about my whereabouts. "I have to go," I told Evelyn. "Harry's coming upstairs." But Harry didn't come upstairs. Instead, I heard him talking to someone on the phone in his office. His voice was too low for me to make out words, but the conversation went on for almost an hour. Thursday brought the parent-teacher conference. Harry and I sat side by side in tiny plastic chairs while Mrs. Peterson, Sophie's second-grade teacher, explained our daughter's recent behavior changes. Sophie's always been such a bright, engaged student, Mrs. Peterson said, but lately she seems anxious. She's having trouble focusing on her work, and she's been asking a lot of questions about family structures. What kind of questions? Harry asked. Well, yesterday she asked if it was normal for mommies and daddies to not talk to each other very much, and she wanted to know if some kids live with just one parent because the other parent goes away. I felt Harry's eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at him. We've been going through a stressful period, Harry said carefully. Work pressures, that sort of thing. We're working on creating a more stable environment at home. That's good to hear. Children are very sensitive to tension between parents, even when we think we're hiding it well. After the conference, Harry and I walked to our cars in silence. Finally, as we reached the parking lot, he spoke. We need to make some decisions, Ianthe. What kind of decisions? About what kind of family we want to be. About what's best for Sophie. We're fine. Sophie's just going through a phase. Are we fine? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like our marriage is falling apart, and our 7-year-old daughter is the one paying the price. Our marriage isn't falling apart. We're just going through a rough patch. Harry looked at me for a long moment. Is that what you call it? What else would I call it? I don't know, Ianthe. What would you call it? There was something in his tone that made me look at him more closely. He wasn't asking a casual question. He was asking a very specific question, and somehow I got the feeling he already knew what answer he expected to hear. I'd call it a temporary problem that we can work through if we both try, I said finally. Harry nodded slowly. Okay, let's try. What does that mean? It means I think we should spend this weekend focusing on our family. No work projects, no outside commitments. Just the three of us, working on being a family again. The suggestion should have made me happy. Instead, it made me panic. A whole weekend with Harry watching my every move, asking careful questions, making notes in his phone. I can't this weekend, I said quickly. I have that big project I've been working on. I'll probably need to put in some hours over the weekend. On Saturday and Sunday? Maybe just Saturday. Or Sunday, I'm not sure yet. Harry made a note in his phone. The gesture was starting to feel like a threat. What project is this exactly? He asked. I told you. Customer satisfaction surveys. Right, the surveys. He looked up from his phone. Who else is working on this project with you? What do you mean? I mean, it seems like a big project if it's requiring so much overtime. There must be other people involved. I felt trapped. Every answer I gave seemed to lead to more questions. There are a few of us working on it, I said vaguely. Anyone I know? No, just people from work. Harry nodded and made another note. Well, I hope you get it finished soon. Sophie misses spending time with you. The comment hit its mark. I did feel guilty about missing so much time with Sophie, but I also felt resentful that Harry was using our daughter to manipulate me. I'm doing my best to balance everything, I said defensively. I know you are, Harry replied, but something in his voice suggested he knew exactly what I was trying to balance, and it wasn't work and family. That night, I lay awake thinking about the parent-teacher conference and Harry's suggestion that we focus on family time. Part of me wanted to take his offer seriously, to try to rebuild what we'd had, but another part of me felt suffocated by the idea of a weekend under Harry's watchful eye. I needed to see Cole. I needed to feel like myself again, not like a suspect in my own marriage. Friday evening, I told Harry I had to work late on the project. Again, he asked, making his inevitable note. It's the final push. After this weekend, things should calm down. Good. Sophie will be glad to have her mum back. I drove to Cole's apartment feeling like I was sneaking out of prison, but when I got there, Cole seemed agitated. "This has to stop," he said as soon as I walked in. "What has to stop?" "This whole thing, us. Your husband knows, Ianthe." "He doesn't know anything." "He was here." My blood went cold. "What do you mean he was here?" "Yesterday, he came to my apartment, knocked on the door and introduced himself." "Oh my God. What did he say?" "He was very polite, very calm. He said he was trying to understand some things about his wife's schedule, and he wondered if I could help him." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, but he knew, Ianthe. He knew exactly what he was talking about." I sank onto Cole's couch, feeling dizzy. "Did he threaten you? Did he seem angry?" "That's the scary part. He didn't seem angry at all. He seemed methodical, like he was collecting information for some specific purpose." "What kind of purpose?" "I don't know, but I don't want to find out. This is over, Ianthe. I can't be part of whatever's happening between you and your husband." "Cole, please, don't do this. Harry's just trying to scare you." "Well, it worked. I'm scared. Your husband isn't the harmless accountant you described. There's something calculating about him." I spent the next hour trying to convince Cole to continue seeing me, but his mind was made up. Harry's visit had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. When I finally left Cole's apartment, I felt like my world was collapsing. Harry knew about the affair, Cole was ending things, and I was trapped in a marriage that felt more like a chess game I was losing. The drive home was a blur of panic and desperate planning. How much did Harry actually know? What was he planning to do with the information? And most importantly, how could I regain control of the situation? I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the car following me, but as I turned into our neighborhood, I caught a glimpse of headlights in my rearview mirror that had been there for several blocks. I drove past our house and around the block, and the headlights followed. My heart was pounding as I finally pulled into our driveway, but when I looked back, the street was empty. Inside, I found Harry reading in the living room. "You're home early," he observed. "We finished ahead of schedule." "That's good. How did the project turn out?" "Fine. Good. We got everything done." Harry nodded and made a note in his phone. But this time, instead of looking down at the screen, he looked directly at me while he typed. "Harry, we need to talk." "Do we?" "Yes, about us, about what's been happening lately." "What's been happening lately, Ianthe?" Again, that feeling that he was asking a question he already knew the answer to. "We've been growing apart. We need to figure out how to fix that." "I'd like that," Harry said. "I'd like to figure out how to fix things." "Good, so let's start fresh. No more sleeping on the couch, no more weird questions, no more making me feel like I'm under investigation." "Investigation?" Harry looked genuinely puzzled. "Is that how you feel?" "Sometimes, with all the notes you're taking, all the questions about my schedule, it feels like you don't trust me." "Should I trust you?" The question hung in the air between us. I knew this was the moment to come clean, to admit everything and hope we could work through it together. Instead, I doubled down on the lie. "Of course you should trust me. I'm your wife. I love you." Harry studied my face for a long moment. Then he smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. "I love you too," he said, "and I want to trust you. So let's start fresh, like you said." I felt a surge of relief. Maybe I'd been paranoid. Maybe Harry's behavior had been about something else entirely. "Thank you," I said, moving to sit beside him on the couch. "There's just one thing," Harry said as I settled next to him. "What?" "I think we should go to counseling, together, to make sure we're really communicating with each other." The suggestion made my stomach clench. A marriage counselor would ask direct questions, would want to explore the source of our problems. I couldn't risk that kind of scrutiny. "Do you think we really need counseling?" I asked. "I mean, we're talking now. We're working things out. I think it would be good for us, a neutral third party to help us understand each other better." "Let me think about it." "Of course. Take all the time you need." but something in his voice suggested that time was exactly what I didn't have. Saturday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Harry made pancakes, while Sophie chatted about her plans to build a fort in the backyard. For a few minutes, we almost felt like a regular family again. Then the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Harry said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. I heard him talking to someone at the front door, but couldn't make out the conversation. When he returned to the kitchen, he was carrying a large manila envelope. "Who was that?" I asked. "Delivery service," Harry said calmly, setting the envelope on the counter. "This is for you." My name was written across the front in official-looking print, with a return address from Hartwell and Associates Attorneys at Law. My hand started shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents, separation papers, custody arrangements, and a detailed financial disclosure that showed Harry had been systematically documenting our assets for weeks. "What is this?" I whispered, though I knew exactly what it was. "It's what happens when a marriage stops working," Harry said quietly. Sophie looked up from her pancakes, sensing the tension. "What's wrong, Mummy?" "Nothing, sweetheart," I managed. "Daddy and I just need to talk about some grown-up things. Why don't you go start building that fort?" After Sophie left, I turned to Harry with a mixture of rage and panic. "You can't be serious about this." "I'm very serious." "Harry, we talked about this last night. We agreed to start fresh." "No, Ianthe, you talked about starting fresh. I listened." I looked through the papers again, my panic growing. Harry was seeking primary custody of Sophie, citing my frequent absences and emotional unavailability. He'd frozen our joint accounts. He'd even changed the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. "When did you do all this?" "I've been working on it for a few weeks, ever since I realized that our marriage wasn't just going through a rough patch." "What do you mean?" Harry pulled out his phone and scrolled through what looked like pages of notes. "I mean, ever since I realized that you've been having an affair with Cole Hartley for the past 2 months." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Harry's voice remained calm, almost conversational. "You've been meeting him at his apartment every Friday night for 6 weeks. You had lunch with him at your office break room on 12 separate occasions. You've lied to me about working late at least 15 times. How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been paying attention, Ianthe, really paying attention, for the first time in our marriage." Harry walked to his home office and returned with a folder full of photographs, printed emails, and what looked like a detailed timeline. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago," he said, spreading the evidence across our kitchen table. "I wanted to be sure before I made any major decisions." The photographs were devastating. Me and Cole entering his apartment building, me and Cole having lunch, me and Cole kissing in the parking garage at my office. Each image was dated and time-stamped. "Harry, I can explain—" "Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain telling our family that I'm only good for paying bills while you're sleeping with another man. It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" I stared at the evidence spread across our table, my mind racing. There was no point in denying it anymore, but I couldn't bring myself to admit the full truth either. "We were having problems," I said finally. "You and I, we'd grown apart." "So you decided to have an affair instead of talking to me about it?" "I tried to talk to you. You're always working, always focused on your spreadsheets and your routines. When was the last time you looked at me like you actually saw me? When was the last time you gave me a reason to?" The question stung because I couldn't answer it. "Harry, please. We can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time." "Some couples do," Harry agreed. "Couples where both people want to save the marriage." "I do want to save our marriage." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want to save your comfortable lifestyle while continuing to see Cole on the side." "That's not true. I ended things with Cole." "When?" "Last night." Harry consulted his notes. "According to the investigator's report, You were at Cole's apartment until 10:47 p.m. last night. That's a long conversation for ending a relationship. I felt trapped by the precision of his documentation. Every lie I'd told, every excuse I'd made, every time I'd tried to manipulate the situation. Harry had been quietly gathering evidence. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself and our daughter. Our daughter? Sophie doesn't need to know about any of this. Sophie already knows something's wrong. She's been asking her teacher if it's normal for parents to sleep in separate rooms. She's been having nightmares about one of her parents going away. The guilt hit me like a wave. I'd been so focused on my own unhappiness that I'd barely considered how our problems were affecting Sophie. We don't have to get divorced, I said desperately. We can go to counseling. We can work on our problems. What problems, Ianthe? Because I thought our main problem was that you found me boring and decided to find excitement elsewhere. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Because it seems pretty simple to me. You wanted something I couldn't give you, so you went looking for it somewhere else. The only complicated part was all the lying you did to cover it up. I looked at Harry, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing a side of him I'd never encountered before. This wasn't the passive, accommodating man I'd married. This was someone who'd been pushed too far and had decided to push back. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to sign the separation agreement. And if I don't, then we go to court and all of this becomes public record. Your affair, your lies, your neglect of Sophie, it all gets presented to a judge who will decide our custody arrangement. You wouldn't do that. Wouldn't I? Harry looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, but something colder and more final. Ianthe, for 8 years, I've been the one who compromises. I've been the one who apologizes. I've been the one who tries to keep the peace. But I'm done being the only one who cares about this family. I care about this family. Do you? Because caring about your family means putting their needs before your own wants. It means being honest with the people you love. It means not humiliating your husband in front of his relatives because you think it's funny. The reference to that dinner felt like a lifetime ago, but I could see now that it had been the beginning of the end. Harry, please. I made mistakes. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Ianthe. Some things are just broken. I spent the next hour trying every argument I could think of. I apologized. I begged. I promised to change. I even tried to shift blame back to Harry for being emotionally distant. Nothing worked. Harry listened to everything I said with the same calm, evaluating expression, occasionally making notes in his phone. Finally, I played my last card. What about Sophie? You're going to destroy her family over this? I'm not destroying her family. I'm protecting her from growing up in a home where her parents lie to each other and use her as a weapon in their arguments. She needs both her parents. She'll have both her parents. She'll just have them in separate homes, where hopefully at least one of them will model honesty and respect. The finality in his voice made me realize that this wasn't a negotiation. Harry had already made his decision. The papers, the evidence, the careful documentation, it had all been leading to this moment. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since the night you told everyone I was only good for paying bills. That's when I realized that you didn't just take me for granted, you actually had contempt for me. I don't have contempt for you. Don't you? When's the last time you said something nice about me to anyone? When's the last time you defended me instead of making me the butt of your jokes? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. The thing is, Harry continued, I could have lived with being taken for granted. I could have lived with being boring and predictable. But I can't live with being actively despised by the person who's supposed to love me most. I don't despise you. Then why did you cheat on me? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to give him some profound explanation about feeling unfulfilled, or needing passion or growing apart. Instead, the truth came out in a whisper. Because I could. Harry nodded as if I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. That's what I thought, he said quietly. The rest of the conversation was about logistics. Harry had already found an apartment across town. He'd spoken to Sophie's school about the custody arrangement. He'd even talked to a therapist about how to help Sophie adjust to the changes. Every detail had been planned with the same methodical precision Harry brought to everything else. The only difference was that this time, his careful planning was working against me instead of for our family. As Harry packed his things, I sat in our kitchen surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal, finally understanding what I'd lost. Not just a marriage, but a partnership with someone who'd loved me enough to forgive almost anything, until I'd pushed him past the point of forgiveness. The man I'd dismissed as boring and predictable had quietly outmaneuvered me at every turn. While I'd been playing games, Harry had been playing chess, and I'd never even realized the game had started until it was over. Sophie cried when Harry explained that Daddy would be living in a different house for a while, but that she'd still see him all the time. She asked if it was because of something she'd done, and Harry assured her it was a grown-up problem that had nothing to do with her. "Will you and Mommy still be friends?" she asked. Harry looked at me across the room. "We'll always be Sophie's parents," he said carefully. "That's the most important thing." As Harry carried his last suitcase to his car, he paused at the front door. "For what it's worth," he said, "I really did love you. I loved the woman I thought you were." "Harry, wait!" But he was already walking away, and this time I knew he wasn't coming back. I watched from the window as he drove away, taking with him 8 years of marriage and leaving behind a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty. My phone buzzed with a text from Cole. "I heard about the separation. I'm sorry, but I meant what I said. We're done." Then another from Evelyn. "Janice called me. She told me what happened. I think you should know. Everyone's talking about it." And finally, one from my mother. "Your father and I are very disappointed. Harry was a good man. I hope you realize what you've thrown away." I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage, finally understanding the difference between winning and being right. Harry had been quiet, methodical, and absolutely devastating in his response to my betrayal. He'd given me every opportunity to be honest, to fight for our marriage, to choose our family over my affair. Instead, I'd chosen to keep lying. Right up until the moment he'd served me with papers that proved he'd known the truth all along. The man I'd joked was only good for paying bills had just taught me the most expensive lesson of my life.